So Barack Obama walked into Toronto, shook Mark Carney's hand at a global summit, gave a keynote speech, and MAGA lost its mind. Laura Loomer called it a coup, others were screaming about the Logan Act, and some were calling for Obama's arrest. And every single bit of that panic tells you one thing. The movement that calls itself the greatest political force in modern American history just got rattled by a handshake.
And that's what we're here to talk about today. Not whether Obama broke a law he clearly didn't break. The real question is why his presence in a Canadian city produced that level of alarm from a movement that claims to represent American strengths. Because when you answer that question honestly, the reaction makes perfect sense for all the wrong reasons.
What just happened in Toronto exposed something the MAGA media complex has been working very hard to keep covered up. We're going to walk you through what it is and what it means for Canada.
Let's start with what actually took place. Obama came to Toronto for the Global Progress Action Summit, an international gathering focused on economic security, democracy, AI governance, and global cooperation. He gave the keynote address. Prime Minister Mark Carney welcomed him and thanked him for joining the conversation.
Listen, former leaders travel. Former leaders speak. The world does not stop spinning because someone who used to hold office boards a plane.
And yet, within hours, the MAGA media ecosystem had converted a keynote speech into a shadow coup operation. So let's just unpack the Logan Act that they're all freaking out about, because this gets deployed like a loaded weapon without anyone explaining what it actually says.
The Logan Act is a 1799 law, and that's not a typo, 1799. The project that prohibits private American citizens from conducting unauthorized negotiations with foreign governments on matters that are actively in dispute with the United States. The key words here are negotiations and actively in dispute. Obama was giving a speech at a summit. There were no negotiations, and there was no live dispute. There was a podium and a microphone at a conference.
But here's where it gets particularly revealing. While Donald Trump was a private citizen between his presidencies, he hosted Benjamin Netanyahu at Mar-a-Lago. He held meetings with Viktor Orban at Mar-a-Lago. He met privately with multiple foreign heads of state and senior government officials while holding no official position in the United States government.
And these were highly public meetings where Trump was clearly presenting himself as an alternative power center while another administration was still officially running U.S. foreign policy.
So if you actually believed the Logan Act was some sacred legal principle, that should have triggered the nonstop outrage, because that is far closer to private citizens freelancing foreign policy than Barack Obama giving a keynote speech in a public event in Toronto, Canada.
But MAGA said nothing. Suddenly it was leadership and diplomacy. Well, listen, people, the law did not change between Trump's Mar-a-Lago meetings and Obama's Toronto appearance. The politics did.
Yes, it did. Now, let's get into why this reaction happened, because it was not about the Logan Act, Dave. The Logan Act was the cover. Something else was driving all that outrage.
MAGA always calls Obama irrelevant. They say he has no power, no influence, no standing. And then the moment that he crosses the border, they have a full political crisis. Those two positions cannot be true at the same time.
No, they can't. And the fact that they try to hold both of them simultaneously is what makes the Toronto reaction so telling. When a movement claims its leader is unmatched, the most powerful figure in the world, and then goes into emergency mode because a former president gave a speech in another country, well, that movement is telling you something that they didn't intend to tell you.
Yep, it's telling you that they know and they're scared. Deep down, they know that there's a gap between how Trump is received internationally and how Obama is received internationally. And they know which side of that gap their leader is on.
Trump craves that kind of reception. He craves it loudly and publicly. The craving is intense and on the verge of a tantrum every day because the reception isn't arriving the way the movement claims it is.
And when that gap becomes impossible to hide, the only move left for the MAGA media machine is to turn the photograph into a crime, because acknowledging the gap would cost them just too much.
That approach is not called strength by allies. Allies do not experience that as leadership. They experience that as instability. They endure it. There's a huge difference between a world leader who is respected and one who is endured. And the MAGA reaction to Toronto was an unintentional announcement of exactly where that man sits on that spectrum.
Obama's international standing was built on something entirely different. Not on being universally liked, but by being consistent. Allies could predict how he would respond to a crisis. They could trust that an agreement signed on Tuesday would still be the agreement by Friday.
But Trump's brand internationally operates on dominance through uncertainty. Let's keep everyone off balance, apply pressure, and extract concessions.
Now, let's bring this directly back to Canada, because Obama was not secretly summoned to Toronto as part of some anti-American conspiracy. He was appearing at the Global Progress Action Summit, an event organized by Canada 2020 and the Centre for American Progress Action Fund. It's focused on economic security, democratic stability, AI, and global cooperation.
Canada hosted that conversation. And when the former president of the United States chooses to attend a summit on your territory, that sends a signal to every government watching. The signal is that Canada is where serious people and serious conversations happen. Not by accident, but because of deliberate choices made over the past year.
Just look at the sequence here. The Canada Strong Fund, the invitation to the European Political Community Summit, the first non-European country ever invited, I might say, the Saudi Arabia Sectoral Alliance, the CUSMA coordination with Mexico, and we can't forget the famous Davos speech. And now Obama at a global summit in Toronto. Each one of those sends the exact same message to the same audience. Canada has relationships that Washington cannot veto or ignore.
And for the people in this administration who wanted Canada isolated and compliant, who believed that tariffs and bullying would produce submission, that image from Toronto is the exact opposite of the outcome they were looking for. Canada was supposed to be alone at the table. Instead, it brought Europe, Asia, Mexico, and Obama.
So for Canadians, this is not about choosing Obama over Trump, although most of us would, right? It's about Canada building the kind of global standing that makes it a partner countries want, not just one they have to deal with because of geography. And that distinction matters for jobs, for investment, for long-term security, and is being built in real time right now.
What America is actually losing in this period is something that doesn't show up in a trade deficit number, and it's something that cannot be recovered quickly.
Soft power. The ability to pick up the phone and have allies genuinely want to work with you instead of quietly preparing backup plans behind your back. This is a different kind of influence than tariffs produce.
It took the United States decades to build that influence. It was built through alliances, through institutions, through showing up as a consistent partner across administrations and different crises. That accumulation of trust is what put American foreign policy in the position that it was in. Now, to be clear, Canadians and Canada were not celebrating any of this. A weakened United States with declining global trust is not in Canada's interest at all. Canada's interest is a strong, reliable partner to the South. What Obama's visit made impossible to ignore is the gap between what that relationship was and what it currently is today, and who made the choice to create that gap.
MAGA wanted this to be a story about a crime that didn't happen. The Logan Act story collapsed on contact with the actual facts, and what they were left with was what was really there. The knowledge that when Obama crosses the border, the world notices in a way that their movement cannot produce for the man currently in the White House. So here's what we want to hear from you today. Did MAGA turning a Toronto keynote into a coup operation expose real insecurity about Trump's global standing, or was this just another outraged performance for his base?
Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if this gave you something to think about, share it, like it, hype it, and subscribe.
Oh, and one more thing. Let us know if our videos are still showing up in your feed, because we've been hearing from a lot of viewers lately that we've suddenly disappeared from their recommendations.
So if we're not popping up the way we used to, make sure to search for us directly, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so YouTube still remembers we exist.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Ciao for now.